What's up, everybody? It's Jeremy here from Oceanbound, and I finally was able to get my hands on an 8-meter F1 Strike CWC wing, and I've been so excited to share my thoughts on it. And this is why we're here today, and I've got a lot to say, so let's just dive right in. Here we go. So I ordered this thing in October and it showed up mid-February. And then since then, it just really hasn't been that light windy. I got 2 sessions right off the bat on it. I could say that both of the sessions were pretty much dabbling in the top end of its range. If you go by their numbers, the 8-meter is said to be for like 6 to 15 knots, or that's like 7 to 17 miles an hour, and the 6-meter is supposed to be from 10 to 22 knots, or 11.5 to 25 miles an hour. So both sessions were averaging in their 20s, and my first one was gusting into the 30s, so I got to see that end of it. As I started to put my thoughts down on paper, I decided I really needed like a 3rd session on it. The one thing that I really wanted to try with this wing that I didn't really get to do in those sessions was, see how the drift was. And then, I didn't really get to see that many of its light wind characteristics either. I didn't want to review an 8-meter only for its top end when it's meant for being like a light wind wing. So I got it in February, and look, it's April, and I finally just got that light wind wave sesh that I've been looking for. So this review can finally happen, and I feel pretty good about it. I have a 6-meter Strike CWC wing, and I love it. It's my go-to wing. I got it in July, I think, of 2021, and it's definitely been ridden more than any of my other wings. It has power, it feels solid, but it also feels like a 5-meter, so it's just awesome, especially in the conditions I get around here. My buddy Paul has a 7-meter, and he prefers the 7. So I've been wondering for months, does the 8 go past the tipping point? Is it too big, or did F1 kind of do it again, and did they make something really special? And the other thing I was thinking too is is this a newer wing production-wise, and is there any difference in the build? F1 recently released their 5.5 and their 5-meter Strike V2 wings. They're gonna have more sizes later. They're doing half sizes, which is pretty interesting. I can really fine-tune my quiver. So I was wondering what 8-meter I was gonna get. Is it an older production? Is it new? But my wing dealer, Phil from kitesite.net, said that they're not doing a V2 the CWCs this year, so they're just keeping with these designs. And that's totally fine with me. I like how they have new colors. I got this nice blue by request. It's Abyss. I really think it's a nice looking wing. So all of this made me question what I was looking for in an 8-meter, right? Or maybe like what I expected. An 8-meter needs to be something you grab when the conditions are the lightest, right? But is it too much to ask for high performance with an 8-meter? Or can a wing this big be high performance? If I'm out on an 8-meter, is it because I'm totally jonesing for a session and, I need to get out in the lightest wind possible? And that would require something that pumps well, gets me up on foil quick, has a decent amount of pull when my 6-meter's kind of lacking. The other questions are, is it fun to try new things on, or is it annoying and too sluggish to work with? Is it because the wind is light and there's waves that need to be ridden? Is it possible to do a light wind onshore wind and wave day? These are bigger questions that I can fully answer with just a couple sessions, but after 3 sessions, I do think I have some insights to them, so that's why we're here. Alright, so let's run through some observations and specs. The build quality seems to be the same as my 6-meter CWC Strike. Honestly, I don't see any significant difference between the two. Out of the bag, it's noticeably more fabric and heavier, but they didn't seem to change the weight or the materials that they use in the canopy and the leading edge. And by the way, I reached out to F1 because I don't post any of their specs online for the CWC wings. They did answer me, but unfortunately their answer was, "Thank you for your message and the interest shown in our brand. As you guess, we simply cannot provide you with this information." So that is unfortunate, but I guess we'll just have to do it the old DIY way. I weighed these 2 wings on my own. The 6-meter was 5.7 pounds and the 8-meter was 7 pounds. This is with the leashes attached to it. So that's 1.3 pounds or 0.6 kilograms difference. I pumped up the wings on the beach. The center strut profiles are obviously different for the non-CWC brethren of these wings, but the 2 CWC wings that I have appear to have about the same design. The approximate length of the 6 meters center strut is 82.5 inches versus the 8 meters is 95 inches. So that's over a foot of difference, or about 32 centimeters, or a 15% increase from the 6 to the 8. So where are they different? Here's an overlay that I did of the two wings that I just got off of their website. So the wings do go outward a little bit, to be expected, but most of the extra area is in the trailing edge of the wing. That's more accessible power-wise, pulling your back arm in. If you think about it, when you have a wing that's like wider from wingtip to wingtip and you pull in, you're pulling, from the center first. And that has a tendency to have a wider wing. It'll fold more in the center first. So as you pull in, a wing with a loose trailing edge and or wider wingtips will start to cut through the air middle first. So if the leading edge is tight or more low aspect, which means it's not as wide, it's more like, compact in the middle, then the pull is more solid and it happens right away. The 8 meter actually has a tighter leading edge than my 6 meter, but I'm kind of guessing that that's probably just from almost a year's use. So F1 says, because touching the water while riding is one of the big sizes issue, we have also worked on the tips profile. They naturally stay away from the water surface. If they do hit the water, their design allows them to glide over and not stop as it would. This allows you to ride with your hands at normal height and not with your arms over your head. That's interesting. Is it true? Maybe. It sounds a little gimmicky to me. I dragged the wingtips on the water's surface many times, and I would say that I drag down just as much as a smaller size or other brands do. So I think this is kind of a marketing gimmick, but maybe it is a little better than their competitors. Speaking of shape, the wing says to pump it to 8 psi, the 5 and the 5.5 meter says to pump them to 9 psi. I like mine rock hard, so I definitely pump mine at more than 8 psi, and that helps with the shape, especially in the higher ranges. There's nothing worse being out in the water and have your wing kind of fold away with the wind when you're totally lit. And having a tight leading edge obviously helps when pumping in lower ranges too. It's equally annoying when you're pumping and you just feel like the wing and the trailing edge especially is just flopping in your hand. Speaking of shape, that's another reason why the wings retain their shape, especially with a big wing. Having a big leading edge helps keep a solid shape when it's at the right pressure. And F1 also keeps the leading edge from being too long, which also kind of, its compact size helps keep it being rigid. Now, the thickness of the leading edge, the 8 meter, seems like it's the biggest ever when it's in front of you, but I don't actually think it's the biggest out there. I feel like clouds, some duotones, and the ozones all have bigger leading edges, and that's with like a 6 meter. So this is really the only 8 meter that I've seen, and it should be the biggest in the line, which it is. But like I said, I think for an 8 meter, it actually happens to have a smaller diameter leading edge than some of the 6 meters that I've seen out there. Hot topic, handles. Are they any different? Are they bigger? So I measured them. This is what I found. To be expected, the distance between the handles is more. It's wider. The distance between the handles is 20 inches on the 8 meter, and on the 6 meter, the difference between the handles is 16 inches. That's 4 inches farther apart, and you feel that in your upper arms and shoulders. So this definitely changes the angle that your arms are, and it gives you a little bit more help to kind of sheet in the wing properly. So if you think about it, having more wing in the trailing edge gives you more leverage to pull in. This only works when your wing canopy is relatively tight, which F1 does accomplish by adding these 2 extra struts on the CWC wings. By the way, the actual handles themselves are the same on the 6 meter and the 8 meter. The front handle is 12 inches wide, and the back handle is 15 inches wide. Are the handles tighter? I don't think so. I mean, the newer ones do feel a little tighter, but I don't think that's any build. I think it's just because they're not broken in yet. And one thing that was kind of interesting is that the last session I was in, I remember one arm getting a little more worked than the other, and that really just required me to bring my backhand out to the back of the wing more, and that was able to like kind of get me to adjust my shoulders just so both of my arms could be straight. And so ideally, if you can just find a place where both of your arms are straight and that's where you want to hold on, that's going to be the longest that you can like last out there on the water. It's going to tire you out the least. Can I just take a second to talk about the F1 handles? I hear many people knock the F1 handles, saying that they're too floppy. I remember one guy's only comment on my 6 meter review was, "I hate big floppy handles." I totally get that. that, dude. But really, I do think these F1 handles are ideal. And they could tweak them, but they haven't from last year's to this year's. They're a good shape, they're not too thick, they're not too rigid. What they do is they give you options. They're a good length, so you can move your hands back and forth. They seem to be loose, but you can tighten them by kind of pushing in on your thumb. You can lock where your hand is with the handle, and you also, by doing that, kind of brings your hand a little bit closer to that center strut. There's plenty of room to kind of subtly change around your grip and adjust your wing. Wintertime riding, they're great too because they're relatively small and doesn't really work your forearms too much. The wrist cuff is new. Check this out. So I take it all of the CWC wings are now shipping with the new wrist cuff. Awesome. The Velcro strap is wider and it's longer too. Otherwise, everything's the same, so it definitely has better grip and it seems to stay on much better than the V1s. The leash is longer too on this 8 meter. I know the 5 and the 5.5, they're 110 centimeters, and this one is 130 centimeters. So that's 20 extra centimeters. Doesn't seem like a lot, but that's a lot more when you can actually stretch it because they're stretchy leashes. The wing feels like it can get farther away from you, but it's not that bad because, I mean, you need that to be able to get around the wing sometimes. All right, light wind. So why have an 8 meter if you're not going to explore that low end? I kind of look forward to that, but I kind of don't. There's going to be a secret to it, just like most wings, but I've been on big, floppy, heavy wings, and pumping just seems futile, in light winds. I remember being on the 7.5 meter gong and wishing so hard that that trailing edge was tighter so I could just pump better. The 8 meter pumps fine. So much, you definitely wouldn't think it's an 8 meter. Because the trailing edge is farther back, you have a lot of backhand resistance, so it's a really efficient and it gets you up on foil quick. I haven't found my low end with it yet. As mentioned, the F1 site says it can go sub 10 with this, and I'm not saying it's untrue, but I'm also a little uninterested in trying to go down that low. So the power is gradual, but it's pretty much there as soon as you start pulling it. So when tacking or anything, when you need to kill the power, you really do have to let it all out. All right, let me talk about jibes and tacks. At least for a lot of the time that I've had on this thing, I was totally lit, and so I can see a bunch of the same characteristics that this thing has in the smaller sizes. So when I was in a lull or doing like a downwind jibe, I did have to usually push the strut away from me or push it in the direction that I wanted it to go in, so it didn't go completely perpendicular with the surface of the water. So something about being overpowered, it was really nice. It was just a lot to hold on to, but not a lot to hold on to like holding on to one of those like duotone boomed wings where you just feel like you're totally lit. My front hand seemed to carry a lot of the load and was getting a lot more work. It really depends on the angle that you're trying to go upwind, and if you're really trying to crank upwind, your front arm is going to be bent a little bit because you want that wing closer to you and your back arm is farther out. Well, the key is to try to find a way that you can adjust your arms so both arms can be straight, and that's not going to work your arms as much. All right, drifting. So wave riding on this wing puts it to the ultimate test for me. So I look at two things, how well it drifts and then also how kind of stable it can be in the air. Stable is predictability, right? And so that means that it doesn't do funky things when you're trying to turn or drift or tack. The F1s are amongst the best when it comes to this, and the fact it's a huge 8 meter paired with its design really help it to give stability in its movements. It's the most stable out of all of their wings that I've tried. I did some waves with it and it was complete onshore wind and waves and it was super stable. It drifted really well, so I'm super happy. Did it flop? Yeah. I mean, here's a time where I basically ran over the wing going downwind, and technique can definitely help here, and this is only my first wave session, so I'm gonna dial it and get better at it. But yeah, I'm really impressed with the drift for an 8 meter, and it's relatively lightweight, which kind of helps, and so just the shape and the design. Flipping it over, I have a little technique that I usually use for flipping it over. It's not a big difference between the 8 and the 6 meters, so yeah, you can feel the leash is longer, but it's still doable. There's really no difference to your methods there. Okay, so did I make the right decision by choosing the 8 meter, let's say, over a 7 meter? Well, one, it's bigger than the wing that Paul has, so take that, Paul. I love power, so this one happens to have the most score. I love hang time, so that's cool. I haven't really jumped with this yet, but have you seen the videos that Tituan and some of the kids were doing, just sending it off of these big beach bluffs and flying down the hill? Totally rad. I have no interest in going any bigger. The 8 meter is enough, and it really doesn't feel like an 8 meter, and it maneuvers like a way smaller wing. It really does everything I want and expect it to for what it is. So yeah, I'm stoked. I'm glad I have it. It's gonna get a ton of use this year. My biggest dilemma now is, now that I have a 5.5 V2 Strike, and then a 6-meter CWC. Do I keep them both or do I sell the 6-meter? This wing is ideal for bigger people. If you already have a 6-meter and you want to go out in lighter winds, it's definitely worth grabbing. It's not a ton wider than the 6-meter, and the 6-meter was the same width as the 5-meter, so I think you can still use it if you're, shorter than I am. I'm about 5'10"-ish, and I have no issues at all for its width for what it does. So that's it, another long one. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. I try to keep it real, but I do ride all F1 stuff, so I am slightly biased, but their gear both suits my riding style, and in my opinion, it's just some of the best on the market anyway. If you want to see some more of my videos, please click that subscribe button, drop a comment, let me know what you think, or if you have any questions. Hit that like button if you dig what I'm throwing down, and with that, I hope you're all doing well out there. I'll see you guys on the flip, and I wish you all an awesome day. Later!